Let's talk about the difference between validation and valid, because they're not the same thing. I saw a song on TikTok recently where the person was sort of doing like a comedy thing and saying like, I don't want to validate people who are saying things that aren't valid. And those are actually two different things. When we talk about valid, we talk about rooted in truth. When we talk about validation, the kind of context of validating people in conversation, that's not figuring out whether or not what they're saying is true. That's about expressing that we see their experience of life and their emotional experience as having value and being worthwhile. When you get into a conversation, the first thing that a person says often reveals what their goal is, right? So if I get into a conversation, someone mentions plandemic, like a COVID conspiracy thing or like a flat earth thing, I don't think that's valid, but that doesn't stop me from validating the person and connecting with the person, which is my goal, right? If I've got time, I don't need to do this all the time. But if I do have time, or if I'm in person, or it's a family member, or it's important to me, if the first thing I say is, that's stupid and you're wrong, well, I've communicated that my goal is to tell them that I'm correct and that they're wrong. And maybe that my goal is to like change their mind. But that's invalidating. I've talked to leftists before and I'll be like, okay, how do we feel about like empathy, like, and human rights? Are those inalienable, or are there some people that like we should kill? I'm probably never going to get the call on what to do with Elon Musk's mortality. But in the communist revolution in China, people did get pretty bloodthirsty and start killing like petty bourgeoisie, like just people who are small-time landlords and stuff. And that's like people in your community. And then their children are orphaned and they grow up to make anti-communist propaganda and move to the West. So that's not good for communism. And frankly, they were orphaned and bullied and beaten up by communists their whole lives. So is that what we want? Probably not. It's not good in the long run. So instead of having the goal of winning, you can enter a conversation by trying to humanize a person, all right? You're not a good person because you're a leftist, and you're not a bad person because you're a rightist. And evil, bad, stupid, fascist, racist, like these words have meanings, but also we use them often. We throw them around as thought-terminating cliches, which is, oh, you're a racist. Okay, well, I don't have to think about you, right? That's dehumanizing. That is technically dehumanizing. And you're also assuming that you know a lot about the person, right? It also doesn't work. Your goal should be to establish trust, right? Because you're not going to change your mind based on something you were told by a person who opened a conversation by calling you stupid or invalidating what you say. So I almost like to take a more Socratic approach where it's like, I don't actually know. Like I think I know lots of stuff, but can I personally prove that the earth is round? Not right now, no. So if you're trying to talk to a person who believes the thing that you don't believe, that you think is not valid, then try just taking a tack of like, this is what I've observed. Tell me what you've observed. So you can try to find ways to connect over the thing you disagree on, but you could do other things as well. Like you can ask them how they got there. Was there a point where you thought the earth was round, and what changed your mind? See, that's a more interesting question. And then you're talking, right? And you also stand to learn something. And that's sort of the thing. It's like, to rehumanize people, you have to see them as individuals, right? Like you can't look at a person and be like, oh, you believe the earth is flat, ergo, I know everything about you and you're just stupid. Maybe they know lots of stuff that you don't. Maybe they're like a doctor also. So you could ask them that, but you could also like change the subject. You could try to connect with them in another way. If it's like a family member or someone in person or whatever, like, oh, okay. I see that like you and I kind of have a fundamental disagreement about this thing. So let's just not talk about it. Let's just talk about another thing. If that's cool with you, I don't really feel like talking about it. It just sort of seems like we disagree. That's okay. That's okay. Like we're still people, and we're not going to build a better world by killing everyone we disagree with. We're not gonna. That's master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. That's just going to give us more fascism, right? If you are establishing trust with a person, a thing that I found interesting is consent to challenge, is what I sort of call it, which is like, okay, well, we've been talking for a little bit, and you just said a thing, and I'm curious because, like, I sort of see things a different way. I'm wondering if, like, would it be okay if I kind of pushed back on this one thing? Because I sort of see it a different way. And that gives them a choice, right? It demonstrates that you're not so preoccupied with being right. And if you're not just like vein in your forehead, waiting for your chance to tell them, like, oh, is it okay if I push back on that one? Because that, like, I don't know about that one. I've observed a different thing. Could I tell you the thing? Like, what, in full consideration of this thing, what do you think about the thing you just said? You can also see if they're dehumanizing you, because sometimes I do get into conversations and I try to do like a good faith thing, but like if every time I'm sort of like, I'm not sure, they're like, oh yeah, see, because you're just like a liberal freak. Like, okay, well, I'm being dehumanized here, and like my attempted connection is kind of like burning me out, and I don't really want to do this. So, boundary. Protect yourself with boundary, right? A boundary is something that doesn't require the other person to do anything. That's just like, if you keep doing this, then I'm going to go. But also, I'm just going to leave off on this. Has anyone else been trying this? Like sort of rehumanizing people that you disagree with, maybe in comment sections or with your family? Like if you've had success with this, I would love to hear more strategy. I would love to hear more thoughts for like rehumanizing people, especially people we disagree with. But also, you know, this comes up in all our interpersonal relationships. Every so often you have disagreements with people very close to you. And it can be very tempting to try to be heard, right? At the expense of the connection. So if anyone's got ideas, I'd love to hear them.